Greetings, fellow Americans. Well, today I am going to be talking about law enforcement, police, and how to avoid the deception that comes from a lot of them. First of all, I'm not a lawyer. I do not give legal advice. If you need legal advice, try and find yourself a reputable attorney or a lawyer if you can do so. All right, with that said, the reason why I differentiate between police and law enforcement is because they're different. Okay? Sometimes people call police law enforcement, but they're not really law enforcement. I'm going to show the difference. For example, police was formed to protect the corporate entities like cities, boroughs, township, etc. Okay, that's why police were formed. Police are actually policy enforcers. The only difference in the words are the E and the Y at the end. The E in police and the Y in policy, because police come from policy. The word policy in layman terms just means interest. Okay, while police is that enforcement body that enforces the policies. Okay, that's why police were formed. We're going to come back to that in a minute. The sheriff, on the other hand, is different. The sheriff is actually the highest law enforcement officer in the entire county. And throughout the United States, most states or most counties, they have an elected sheriff. A few are appointed, but 99.99% of sheriffs are elected because it's an office. That's why they're called officers. An officer is one who is elected to office. Okay? And the reason why is because the sheriff must be or should be um, voted in by the people. Okay? Because the sheriff is supposed to work for the people. And the Constitution, the Republican form of government that is here in the United States for America, it's a government by consent. So the people put or they vote in place a sheriff that will protect their rights that was given to them by the Almighty, which are unalienable and inherent. Okay, let's go back to the police. Now, the police, they're not elected by the people. Most of the time, they're the chief, for example, is um, chosen by a mayor or stuff like that, or a council, but they're not elected by the people. Okay, and like I said, their job is to enforce policies. Now, oftentimes we'll see stuff like on police cars. They don't even have them anymore, or most cities don't have them anymore. You'll see a term like protect and serve. Okay, protect and serve. So many people, when they see that, they assume that it's saying protecting and serve the people. But obviously, it's not to serve and protect the people. It's to serve and protect the corporations. Okay, for example, all cities are incorporated. Okay, all boroughs are incorporated. All township and towns are all incorporated. They were incorporated at a certain time, and a corporation have its beginning in some type of incorporation or incorporate at a specific time. So if you check out any city or township or borough, you'll see that they have an incorporated day because they are corporations. Okay, and all corporations, major corporations, they have different departments. For example, Walmart. Let's use Walmart for an example. Walmart have different departments. You have the clothing department, you have the food department, you have the automotive department, etc. The gardening department, but they all belong under the same branch of the same Walmart corporation. The cities, the borough, the townships are the same thing. The city, for example, it have the public works department, it has the fire department, it has the police department, etc. Now, what happens is this: when the police is hired, they're hired to maintain, to protect and serve the interests of these corporations. And their job is to ticket or arrest code breakers. Codes are not laws, okay? And they are bylaws. In other words, bylaws are made by corporations, and the corporations are societies who make these bylaws are the only one who can enforce them. Okay, so that's where the police came in. They comes in as revenue generator and also to enforce policies. Now, one of the things that most cities, corporation, boroughs entail is peace. That's why police are also called peace officers because they're supposed to maintain the peace, not because they care about the people, but to maintain the peace for the corporation because nobody who have a business want any kind of disruption because it's bad for business, okay? So that's what police are. As a matter of fact, police and even now sheriffs are not trained in the Constitution anymore. They have never been trained in the Constitution per se, but what I mean by anymore is like several years ago, they used to have what is known as Constitutional Day. That was taught in schools in September, where the students learn the basic of the function of government and why is the Constitution for the United States of America very, very important. Okay, they don't teach that anymore. Why? Because they want the people to be dumb and stupid because it's easier to control an illiterate population. Illiterate in the sense of do not understand their rights. Now, like I said, the police are policy enforcer. The sheriff is supposed to set a better example, but even the sheriffs now start to enforce policy, code, statutes, etc. Okay, this is where it becomes bad. The police and in some cases the sheriff too, they start to use trickery instead of trying to enforce and protect the Constitution. They a lot of them now stoop to the level of just trying to trick and trap people and to bring up arrest record and all different kind of tickets and all different kind of violation to bring in revenue for the county, the city, the town, the borough that they work for. Now, let me share some of the tricks that police do, and sometimes sheriff deputies do, that you have to be careful of. Okay, this is a public announcement to we the people, to share with my fellow Americans. Even though most police and sheriff deputies do not understand the Constitution or most of it, they understand basic stuff. And I'm gonna give you an example. When a car is being pulled over, right? Oftentimes, the driver is responsible for whatever reason the police or the sheriff deputy pull over that car. Whether the person was driving reckless, whatever. Let's say the driver was driving reckless or stuff like that that put the public in danger, right? When that car is pulled over and the deputy or the police approaches, they oftentimes, after getting the driver's license, registration, and insurance, the basic documentation, a lot of time they'll turn to the passengers, and believe it or not, this is the trick. They'll say, "Do you have an ID on you?" Now, many people, including myself at one time, when we hear that, we jump and we start to produce an ID. Why? Because it's the police or the deputy asking us for ID. So we eventually think we have to show an ID to them. No, but guess what? It's a trick. This is the trick. The police or the sheriff deputy know that under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Republic Constitution, the people have a right to be secured in their paper, purses, houses, and effect against unreasonable search and seizure. No warrant shall issue, but on probable cause, in particular, under oath or affirmation, in particular describing the person, paper, and property that need to be searched and seized. So they know they can just randomly get paperwork from you with any kind of lawful authority. So they do a trick, and this is the trick. They'll say, do you have an idea? No, it's up to you and I if we voluntarily choose to show or give that officer an idea. Why? Because he never demand for us to give him our ID. He said, do you have an idea? Okay? You have a right to ask us that. Just like we could ask him the same thing. Can I see your idea? I mean, anybody could ask somebody if they have an idea. Okay? But ordering an ID is different. Most of the time, they do not order the passenger saying, I need to see, show me your ID or give your ID to me for identification purpose. They don't do that. Most of the time, they say, just simply, do you have an idea? And they have a right to do that. They're not breaking any law. They're not violating anybody by just asking them, do you have an idea? You could say yes or no. There's nothing more they could do. The only way they could force you to give an idea is if they suspect that the person is committing a crime that give them probable cause under the Fourth Amendment. That's a trick. So people voluntarily give up their ideas not knowing that they don't have to give any idea if they're not involved or being suspected of committing any crime. The next trick they use sometime upon we the people is this. Let's say somebody is at an event or at a location that they have every right to be. Okay? Let's say the police or the sheriff deputy is fishing, looking for somebody, looking to get the person to um, either get into some type of trouble. What they do sometimes, they'll come and they'll ask questions like, what are you doing here? No, the person, as long as it's the person of a legal or lawful right to be there, they don't even have to answer. But this is the trick. The officer will say sometimes things like, I'm asking you to leave. Very tricky. That's not an order. There's a difference between asking somebody to leave and ordering them to leave. Okay? So when the officer say, I'm asking you to leave, he's asking you, just like how you and I could ask him to leave. But does he have to leave? No. Do you have to leave? No. If they're ordering you to leave, that's different. The reason why, if you have a right to be there and they're ordering you to leave, later on, when you turn around and sue them, you have a case because guess what happened? They're violating your right by telling you to ordering you to leave from somewhere that you have a right to. But if the officer say, I'm asking you to leave, and you turn around and sue him, you will get some slick lawyer who will say, well, the officer asked him to leave. He never ordered him to leave. You know what I'm saying? These are the tricks that they play. So we the people have to be very careful. I remember I was looking at a case law many years ago from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Georgia. They handle Florida District Court appeals. And there was this case where this young lady was in a car with four guys and they were coming home from some partying event, and I don't know what happened, but it somehow ended up that the car was shot up by the police. And all three young men died. The only survivor was the young woman. She was injured, but she survived. At one point, after she recovered, she was being questioned by the police. And they questioned her. And she stayed. Then later on, she decided to sue. The case was dismissed in federal court and it was appealed to the 11th Circuit Court in Georgia. The court ruled and affirmed in favor of the police. Why? The court stated that um, the officers they have the they have a right to interview the young lady. The young lady voluntarily stood there. She went through the interview. She could have left at any time, but she just stayed there because at that time she thought that she had to stay there. So she just stayed there and she stayed there and she stayed there and she stayed there during the whole entire interview. Then she turned around and sued. The court was right. They didn't force her to stay. She could have get up and leave at any time. But because she stayed, it becomes voluntary. And therefore she didn't have a case. They didn't hold her against her will. So these are some of the tricks that people need to know when it comes to their right. The officers and they have a right to ask us basic things. They're not ordering us a lot of times. But we don't make the distinction between order and asking. And let me give you a prime example. If I see you going down the street and I come to you and I say, do you have a dollar? That's different than if I said to you, I'm ordering you to give me a dollar. If I'm ordering you to give me a dollar, that can be construed as robbery because I'm trying to force you to do something. But if I ask you, do you have a dollar? I'm not forcing you. I'm just asking you. I mean, anybody could ask anybody a question. So that's the difference between asking and ordering. Like I said, look it up, watch a lot of videos, you'll see it in person. A lot of time the officer just ask, I'm asking you to leave. I'm asking you, do you have an idea? He's not compelling you, he's not forcing you. He's just asking you if you have an idea. So we have to be very, very, very careful with these words of art. Like I said, it's very simple once you understand what they're trying to do. And like I said, I'm not against anybody. I'm not against any police or any law enforcement. As a matter of fact, I'm one of the biggest supporters of the sheriff and all law enforcement. Why? Because they were intended to do good in the first place. But then, like I said, there's a lot of bad apples in the group, and but most of them are decent, hardworking, decent people who are out there to do a good job. It's just that a lot of them are not trained properly, and when they're on the job, they have to be using their common sense. Okay, and common sense nowadays isn't that common either. So don't knock all of them. Like I said, most officers are decent, law-abiding people who just are doing the best that they could do. So until then, this is just my short video. Shalom.